after she walked to the bathroom, I was at the bar by myself, and I was about this close to just leaving the bar, making her pay for the date, and just getting out of there. But I think that would weigh way too heavily on my conscience. I like to consider myself a good guy. So I made a video when I first started this whole YouTube journey. And the video was about dating apps and how toxic they are and how frustrating they can be, and really just the whole idea of them is set up in a way that doesn't necessarily give you the best odds of actually finding someone to date and a potential partner to be with long term. That they're more focused on validation and hookup culture, and people more or less just getting entertainment or ego boosts from the dating apps as opposed to actually finding someone to date. And I didn't give a whole lot of context on my actual experience going on dates and any of the actual dates that I went on. So I wanted to make this video because there's one particular date story that I went on, and it was a disaster. It was terrible. There were so many red flags throughout the entire date. And it was one of those dates where going into it, I was actually pretty excited about it because the person I was going to date, go on this date with, had an awesome profile. All of these pictures were, top notch. They were like modeling photos. And I was super excited about it. And then when I get on the actual date, it was a huge letdown. And I wanted to make this video just talking about the entire experience and the red flags that I noticed while on it. And I guess just a lesson to be learned from it. So I guess just to preface, this took place probably about a year ago whenever I was on the dating apps. It was on Hinge, and Hinge is typically one of those apps that has higher quality people on the apps, people that are looking more for a relationship as opposed to just, the hookup culture or, a night of fun like you'd find on like Tinder or whatnot. But it was on Hinge, and this was right after I went through one of those cycles of I was on the app for a while. I deleted it because I was frustrated with the app, and I had just re-downloaded Hinge. So I was fresh back on the app, and probably within like 2 or 3 days of being on the app, I matched with this woman, and I'll go ahead and call her Jane. I don't know why Jane came to mind, but we'll go with the name Jane. So I matched with Jane, and her profile is awesome. She has all of these like modeling photos. She's super hot in her photos. Her photos show that she's interested in the fitness. A lot of green flags right off the bat. We match. Within like a couple hours of matching, we start exchanging messages. It wasn't one of those situations where you match and then no one starts the conversation. I don't remember if I started it, she started it. I would probably assume I did, but I'm not 100% certain. But we start exchanging messages, and we're not really beating around the bush a whole lot, which was good. I think on these dating apps, there's only so many messages to be exchanged before a date gets set up. And there was no beating around the bush. We exchanged a few messages, decided within a day or two of messaging that we wanted to meet up and have a date, as it should be. It was super flawless. The logistics were pretty plain and simple, pretty straightforward, and we made a date to get some drinks and have an appetizer together at one of the local bars. So thus far in the story, everything is good. There's a lot of green flags. I'm excited for this date, and I'm on my way to the date. I let her know, and I get to the bar. I got there, I think, a little bit early, just because that's just my nature. Get to the bar a little bit early. I text her saying, "Hey, I'm at the bar. I'll grab a table for us." Which is when the first, I guess, yellow flag is presented. I don't necessarily want to say this is a red flag, but I do think it's more of like a yellow, like cautionary flag. She says, "Okay, get a seat at the bar." She didn't want to sit at a table, which, whatever. Me personally, whenever I go on a first date, I think table is better just because you're like facing the person. It's a little more of a private conversation. It's a little more intimate. Whatever though, she insisted on us getting a spot at the bar, so I do that. I sit at the bar. She says she'll be there shortly. Well, shortly ended up being 20 minutes late, which brings me to red flag number one. She was 20 minutes late. But I was going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I know that shit happens. I know that traffic can hold people up. I think her excuse for it was that her and her mom just got caught talking and she lost track of time. Kind of a poor excuse if you ask me, but I wasn't gonna let that totally impact the rest of the date and ruin the date and the energy moving forward. So I dismissed it, whatever. I'm not gonna hold a grudge. We get going into the date, start talking a little bit, and the date is underway. And I also want to note that when she did show up, this is red flag number 2, is she was what I would consider a catfish, if I'm being completely honest. I mean, I could tell it was the woman in the photos, but she looked very different in person than she did in these photos. All these photos were of her like modeling, very high production quality photos, her working out. Typically, they're just photos of just her as a single person. And then when she shows up in person, she was not nearly as good looking as she looked in photos. And it was just your typical catfish. But like, her being late, I wasn't gonna, be an asshole. I wasn't gonna let that ruin the entire date. I was gonna feel it out and at least enjoy the experience. Or so I thought. So thus far in the story, we have one yellow flag. That's the fact that she wanted to sit at the bar and not at an actual table. That might be up for debate. And then 2 red flags. She showed up 20 minutes late and she was a catfish. But me being, the genuine nice man that I am, I give her the benefit of the doubt. We continue on the date and we jump into a conversation. Or at least what I thought would be a conversation, which leads me to red flag number 3. And this was that she talked 90% of the time on the date. And usually I consider myself a good listener. I actually enjoy hearing people open up and actually learning about people. But this was one of those scenarios where she was talking about anything and everything in her life, ranging from her love for fitness and going to the gym to her and her ex-boyfriend breaking up and why they broke up. That's a red flag in and of itself. To her job, to her aspirations as far as being an actor and all of these things. And that's great. I enjoy learning about that. But it was one of those conversations where she literally talked 90% of the time and asked 0 questions about me, what I was interested in, my background, or anything like that. And at any point in the conversation when I would talk or I would talk about where I'm at or what I'm looking for, she would lose interest very quickly in the conversation. So I quickly understood that this was a very one-sided conversation and my interest level in the date itself continued to go down and down. Now this brings me to a point in the date which was actually kind of jaw-dropping for me, because as she's talking about herself all this time, she mentioned at one point, and I don't remember exactly how she worded it, but she mentioned that she has a very big following online and that she's kind of like a fitness influencer in a sense. So in the back of my head, I'm thinking, she maybe has like 2,000 or 3,000 followers on Instagram or whatever, and she likes posting workout videos. As someone who's also very interested in fitness and sees the benefits of it, I think that's something that I definitely look for in someone else. I consider that a green flag and something that kind of piqued that curiosity a little bit more. So what does any curious guy on a date do? Well, I go to the bathroom. And while I'm in the bathroom, I, of course, pull out my phone and look up her Instagram profile. And to my surprise, she has 17,000 followers on her Instagram page. Now, mind you, again, this woman who I am dating and I'm at the bar with in this restaurant does not look or does not present herself the way that her Instagram profile shows herself. I mean, there's a pretty stark difference. If I saw this Instagram profile and it was just walking down the street, I would not recognize that it was her, or I would not go out of my way to spot her out of a crowd. That's how stark the differences were in these photos and how she presented herself in real life. It's pretty amazing what lighting and photo editing can really do to someone's image. But to say the least, this definitely, piqued some interest in me again. And this is the first time I've been on a date with, I guess, an influencer, someone who has a big social media following. I'm thinking in my head, well, maybe those previous red flags really aren't that big of a deal after all. I mean, she's got 17,000 people that seem to be interested in her life and just interested in her in general. Maybe I should, continue digging a little bit deeper and just continuing the date. So I waltz back out to the bar and, sit with her. A part of me has a chip on my shoulder because I'm sitting here on a date with someone who has, a big following online. And I guess that's kind of a cool thing when in reality it's really not that cool. But I do kind of have a chip in my shoulder, and I guess I am a little bit more curious to finish out the date at least. And as the conversation continues on, red flag number 4 presents itself, and she kept making all of these like raunchy sexual comments. And it wasn't just one or two, it was like a continuous thing to where I was sitting at the bar and I was like kind of like trying to hide my face. Like I was embarrassed that other people were listening around me. That's how like raunchy and weird these were. And she would make comments about how my friends are gonna love her and how my friends are gonna think she's super hot and sexy. And it was very weird, and it was almost, it felt like it was coming from a place of insecurity almost. But, me being a man, especially this is, a year ago when I was more interested and more involved in the whole hookup culture, I was thinking in the back of my head, maybe, worst case scenario, we just hook up or something. This, we go on a few dates and we can have kind of like a friends with benefits relationship. Especially considering, she looks pretty hot online. If I show my friends that I'm, going out with this gal, it kind of builds some credibility for me and it looks good on my status and reputation. And while these kind of like sexual comments and remarks were a bit uncomfortable for me, I wasn't necessarily at the point where I was going to completely write her off. Like I said, maybe there's some potential to, have some sort of relationship or fun or more dates in the future moving forward. I don't know. I'm not going to completely, cross it off until we reach red flag number 5. And this is kind of the one that really got me. She basically asked if I would go outside and smoke a cig with her. And I have nothing against that. I've had my share of social cigs back in the day, in college when I'm out drinking with the buddies and whatnot. But this just really turned me off, I'm being completely honest. We're at this bar for maybe 30 to 45 minutes, and she can't even go that long without, wanting to step outside and smoke a cigarette. And, I tell her that, I don't really smoke. But, if you want to do your thing, go outside and do it. And part of me was thinking she would not do it because I was not interested in that. But she did. She goes outside, and I sit inside by myself for about 5-10 minutes at the bar, like I was whenever she showed up late. She comes back in, she had the smell of cigarettes on her. It was just kind of a turn off for me, if I'm being completely honest. And then she starts at it again with the sexual remarks and sexual comments, and it was almost like she was, trying to like push the envelope and see if like we could go hook up after the date. She made comments about hanging out after and going back to my apartment or doing something after our date, and I kind of just dodged them because I was getting all these red flags and I really wasn't super comfortable with this. And then she asked me a question that just really threw me for a loop and really just turned me off even more, and that was, what do you think your friends are gonna like about me? Like it felt like it was coming from this place of insecurity where she was fishing for compliments in ways for me to like talk her up, I guess, but then at the same time also try to get me to feel jealous. I don't 100% know her complete intentions with it, but it was a weird question to ask, especially on a first date when you really don't know someone that well. And that's more or less what I said to her is like, I don't really know. You're pretty. I don't really know you that well, so that's kind of an awkward question for me to answer, at least until I get to know you better. And long story short is she didn't like that answer very much, I guess. She didn't like it at all, and she ended up going to the bathroom, kind of storming off because I wasn't, I guess, talking her up and telling her what she wanted to hear. I don't know. It was weird. After she walked to the bathroom, I was at the bar by myself, and I was about this close to just leaving the bar making her pay for the date and just getting out of there. But I think that would weigh way too heavily on my conscience. I like to consider myself a good guy, and I decided, it's time to get the check. I'm gonna pay, and we're gonna get out of here, and this date is gonna be over with. And that's pretty much what we did. She came back, closed out tabs, we left, and we parted ways. But I guess the moral of the story here, and me kind of rambling and ranting about this experience, is that there's a lot of people that really present themselves as a certain way online. And a lot of times it can be people with, these big social followings, and they can really present themselves in a way to where they seem like they're very successful or very adventurous or very just interesting people. Yet, remember that social media and the real world are two very different things. That there are a lot of people that may present themselves well online and have these big followings and seem very confident online, but when you meet them in real life, they could be complete duds. They could be very insecure and just really just not fun people to be around. And that was certainly what I experienced, and what I took away from this date is that typically the people who are really trying super hard to make themselves seem a certain way online or present themselves in a certain way online, oftentimes it's just the opposite of that in real life. And I guess to take it even further, you never really know what someone is struggling with. You never really know the true story and what's really happening in people's lives the majority of the time. It's easy to put on a facade and fake a smile, whether it's online or even in real life. But just remember, there's a lot of people that are faking their happiness, that are faking this life that they're not really living and they're not really happy with. Because really the goal, at least for me, in life, is to be happy, to be fulfilled, to be successful in real life, as opposed to just presenting it and making it look like I'm happy, successful, and fulfilled online. Remember to focus, what's right in front of you, real relationships, real experiences, real things that are happening to you in your real life, and prioritize that over what you're seeing other people do on social media or on these dating apps, because there's oftentimes more to the story, more to people than what they like to present themselves as. So that is it. I just wanted to share that story because I thought it was entertaining, and as I look back on it, it was certainly an interesting dating experience, and I think that's part of the reason why I have such a, I guess, sour taste in my mouth towards these dating apps, is because it's just, I haven't had the best luck with them, and I see a lot of people putting on facades or faking their profiles or basically just being on these apps for the wrong reasons. And because of that, I'm going to continue to stay off them, at least for the time being, and pursue the in real life dating scene. So as always, if you guys made it this far in the video, I appreciate you. And until next time, peace.